Growing up, I've always loved thunderstorms. The heavy drumming of rain, the low rumble of thunder, the sudden crack of lightning, all of it strikes a chord deep inside me. There's something primal about it, something that pulls at the edges of fear and exhilaration, a delicate balance of danger and awe. Maybe it's that barely contained chaos that I love. The feeling of witnessing nature at its rawest, most untamed form, with its power just out of reach. There's a sense of surrender in watching a storm, knowing that the only thing you can do is wait it out and hope it leaves you unscathed. Tonight, when the sky began to darken and the air thickened with humidity, I knew a storm was coming. A good one, too, from the looks of it. The clouds were dense, churning in shades of bruised purple and green, ready to unleash their fury. Excitement buzzed under my skin. This time, I wanted to capture it. Not just watch it, but really see it in a way I hadn't before. I had recently bought a new phone, high-end, with a camera that could record in slow motion. I'd seen videos online, clips of lightning captured in stunning detail. Every bolt frozen in time for just a moment, the brief illumination making everything look eerie and otherworldly. I wanted that. I wanted to capture the storm's power in a way that I could keep, replay, and show off. So I decided to set up my phone, record the whole thing, and maybe even post it on one of the subreddits I follow. With the storm on the horizon, I grabbed my phone and tripod, slipped the device into a waterproof case, and headed out to the backyard. The air was thick, electric with anticipation. I could already hear the distant rumble of thunder, like a beast stirring in the distance. I carefully positioned the tripod near the edge of the yard, adjusting it so that half the frame captured the sky and the other half the yard. I figured it would be a cool contrast, watching the lightning light up both the sky and the ground, casting strange shadows across the trees and garden ornaments. The setup was perfect. I switched the camera to slow motion, hit record, and hurried back inside. As I closed the door behind me, the first drops of rain began to fall. I turned off the lights, shut off the TV, and settled in by the window, ready to let the storm take over. The rain came down in sheets, pounding against the glass like 100 tiny fists. Thunder roared, rattling the windows in their frames. Every few seconds, lightning split the sky, illuminating the world outside in stark, white light. In those brief moments, everything looked sharp, almost too clear, like reality itself had been heightened. And then it would disappear, leaving only darkness. I smiled, imagining how amazing the footage would turn out. For the next 20 minutes, I let myself get lost in the storm. The sound of the rain, the crash of thunder, it was almost meditative. When I figured I had recorded enough, I decided to head back outside and retrieve my phone. I didn't want to risk running out of storage. I pulled on my jacket, yanked open the sliding door, and bolted outside, hoping to make it back inside before getting completely soaked. But the moment I grabbed the tripod, my foot slipped on the wet grass, and I went down hard, right into a puddle of freezing, muddy water. I cursed under my breath, not even caring that I was drenched. My phone, the only thing on my mind was whether or not my phone had survived the fall. I scrambled back to my feet, wiping mud from my jacket as I reached for the camera. The lens was fine. No scratches, no cracks. I flipped the phone over, checked the screen, still in one piece. Relief washed over me. The footage was safe. With a sigh, I hurried back inside, dripping water all over the floor as I made my way to my desk. After changing into dry clothes, I plugged my phone into the computer and settled in to review the footage. At first, it was just what I expected. Pitch black darkness, the sound of rain pounding down, thunder rolling in the distance. The slow motion recording stretched every moment out, giving the storm an almost dreamlike quality. Then came the first flash of lightning. It illuminated the yard for a split second, and that's when I saw it. Something at the far end of my yard. I froze, my finger hovering over the pause button. There, standing just beyond the fence, was a figure. It was hard to make out at first, a vague silhouette, facing away from the camera. The light from the flash had only caught it for a brief second, but it was enough to make my skin crawl. I leaned in closer to the screen, my heart pounding in my chest. I replayed the flash in slow motion, watching as the figure appeared again. It was a person, a woman maybe, with matted hair and what looked like tattered clothes smeared with mud. But the thing was, there was no one in my yard. There couldn't be. My yard is fenced in, and the only way in or out is through a gate that screeches when open. I would have heard it. I'd been sitting by the window the whole time, listening to the storm. There was no way anyone could have gotten into my yard without me knowing. So how was there a figure in my footage? I hit play again, my hands trembling slightly. With the next flash of lightning, the figure moved. Not much, but enough to be noticeable. It was closer now, but still facing away, still obscured by the darkness. I could make out more detail this time. Ripped clothing, hair slicked against the head from the rain, and skin that looked unnaturally pale, almost bluish in the brief light. The figure was getting closer. I paused the video, my heart racing. A cold dread settled in my stomach. This couldn't be real. It had to be some kind of trick, maybe a shadow or a piece of debris thrown around by the wind. But deep down, I knew it wasn't. Something about the way the figure moved, slow and deliberate, sent a chill down my spine. I pushed back from my desk and ran downstairs, flipping on the backyard light. The yard was empty, completely still, except for the rain that continued to pour down in sheets. I stood there staring out into the storm, hoping, praying that I was just seeing things. But the fear gnawing at the back of my mind wouldn't let go. I rubbed my eyes, told myself it was just the storm playing tricks on me, and went back upstairs. But when I resumed the footage, the figure was still there, and it was moving again. I leaned closer to the screen, my breath shallow. The next flash of lightning revealed more detail. This time I could see the figure's face, or at least part of it. It was an elderly woman, her hair matted to her scalp, her skin sagging and pale. But there was something wrong with her. Her movements were slow and jerky, like every step took an enormous amount of effort. She was shuffling, as if she were lost or confused, her limbs hanging limply by her sides. With each flash of lightning, she got a little closer, and I could see more of her now. Her clothes were torn, hanging off her like rags, and her skin, God, her skin, was a sickly blue, like she'd been out in the cold for far too long. By minute 10, she had reached the fence. She was standing there, staring ahead, her face hidden in the shadows. My stomach twisted into knots. Something was very, very wrong. I felt it in the pit of my stomach. The woman wasn't just a stranger in my yard. She was something else. I paused the video again, running a hand through my hair. My mouth had gone dry, and my pulse pounded in my ears. What the hell was I supposed to do? Call the cops? Tell them I'd seen a ghost on my phone footage? They'd laugh me off the line. But I couldn't shake the feeling that I wasn't alone. Even though the room was empty, I felt this presence, this sense of something lurking just out of sight. I could feel it, like a cold hand pressing against my back. Watching, waiting. I hit play again. The woman was moving now, closer to the camera. Her gait was uneven, her legs dragging as she shuffled forward. The next lightning flash lit up her face again, and this time I saw it clearly. Her eyes, if you could even call them that, were dull, cloudy gray, like she'd been blind for years. Her mouth hung open slightly, the skin around it cracked and peeling. I could see the edges of her teeth, broken and yellowed. Her skin wasn't just pale, it was rotting. Patches of flesh were missing from her cheeks and neck, revealing raw, exposed muscle beneath. She wasn't human, not anymore. I wanted to stop the video, wanted to close the laptop and forget I'd ever seen it, but I couldn't. I had to know what happened next. Finally, at 16 minutes in, she reached the camera. A lightning flash from the front of the house lit her features for a split second, and I saw her in full detail. Her gaunt face, her sunken eyes, the gaping wound in her torso where her ribs jutted out like jagged bones. Her clothes hung in tatters, soaked through with mud and rain, and her hair, matted with dirt, clung to her scalp. She looked like she had been dead for a long time. And then, as the screen went dark again, I heard it, the sound of my sliding door opening. My breath caught in my throat. I stared at the screen, waiting, praying that I hadn't just heard what I thought I had. But the sound was unmistakable. The woman on the screen stopped, her head turning slightly as if she had heard it too. In the next flash, I saw the camera jolt upwards as I grabbed the tripod, the video feed shaking as I brought it inside. But there was something else, something I hadn't noticed before. In the last frame, just before the video ended, I saw a blur slip through the open door behind me. A shape, a figure, her. The video cut to black, and I was left staring at my reflection in the dark screen. I sat there frozen. My heart pounded in my chest, my skin cold and clammy. I couldn't breathe. What had I just seen? How could she have been there? In my yard, in the footage, and then inside my house? It wasn't possible. None of this was possible. But I knew what I'd seen. She was inside. She had followed me in. I unplugged the phone, my hands shaking. Without thinking, I tossed it into the trash can by my desk, as if that would make a difference. As if that would somehow undo what I had seen. But it didn't. I sat there for what felt like an eternity, my mind racing, trying to make sense of it, trying to rationalize what I had just witnessed. There had to be an explanation. Maybe it was a glitch in the camera, a trick of the light, something. But deep down, I knew the truth. She was real, and she was in my house. The cold feeling that had settled in my stomach spread through my entire body, a creeping numbness that I couldn't shake. I took a deep breath, trying to calm myself, but it didn't help. I needed to see the footage again, to understand what I had let in. Maybe there was something I'd missed, some clue that could explain it all. Reluctantly, I reached into the trash can and grabbed my phone. The screen lit up as I opened the camera app, but something was wrong. Thin red and green scan lines streaked across the display, the camera making these awful clicking sounds as it struggled to focus. I flipped the phone over and saw it, the crack in the lens from when I dropped it. Great. Just great. But I didn't have time to be frustrated. The crack wasn't going to stop me. I turned on the flashlight and began slowly scanning the room, my heart pounding in my chest. Every shadow seemed to stretch longer, every creak of the house suddenly amplified. But the room was empty. For now. I exhaled, trying to think rationally. Okay, so there's an elderly woman in my house, a woman I couldn't see with my own eyes but could only catch glimpses of through the camera. I didn't know what she wanted, but I knew one thing. I couldn't stay here. Not alone. Not without a plan. My mind raced through options, none of them good. I could try to lure her back outside, but then what? She'd still be out there, waiting, and I'd be stuck inside with no way of knowing if she was gone. I needed a better way to see her, something other than my damaged phone. Then it hit me, my tablet. It had a camera too. If I could make it to the basement, I could grab it and maybe figure out what the hell was going on. But first, I needed to get downstairs. I stood up, my legs trembling. Every instinct told me to run, but I forced myself to move slowly, cautiously, scanning the room with the flickering light from my phone. Each step felt like a lifetime, the shadows on the walls twisting and bending with the flashes from the storm outside. I had just reached the top of the basement stairs when I heard it, a crash from the dining room, the sound of glass shattering. My heart leapt into my throat. I turned slowly, phone in hand, the camera feed glitching as I scanned the dining room. Broken glass littered the floor. She must have knocked over a drink I had left on the table. But there was something else too. Blood. A dark, wet pool of it spread across the hardwood floor, and in it I could see footprints. Bloody, clumped footprints, leading away from the dining room, and they were headed right toward me. A low, guttural sound reached my ears like a growl, barely audible over the storm. I spun around, shining my flashlight into the darkness, and there she was, no more than 5 feet away, standing with her back to me. The breath caught in my throat as I stared at her. She hadn't heard me, not yet, but she was close. Too close. I could hear the wet squelch of her feet on the floor, the glass shards scraping under her heels. My phone's flashlight flickered, casting the room into shadows, then light, then shadows again. I didn't move. I couldn't move. Her head twitched slightly, as if she were listening for something. And then, slowly, she began to turn. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't think. I was paralyzed with fear, my feet rooted to the spot. Her head moved in slow, jerky motions, her cloudy eyes scanning the room. She was searching for me. The smell hit me first, a pungent, decaying stench that turned my stomach. The closer she got, the stronger it became. A rancid mixture of earth, rot, and something else I couldn't identify. Her skin, now clearly visible in the strobe of light, was worse than I had first thought. The rot was everywhere, her flesh hanging in loose strips from her body, revealing muscle and bone beneath. Her hands were raised slightly, fingers twitching, as if she could feel me there, even if she couldn't see me. I knew if I didn't move, she would find me. I had to think fast. With my heart pounding in my ears, I slowly, silently, reached for the TV remote on the coffee table beside me. My fingers brushed against the plastic, and I gripped it tightly, praying I could pull this off. If I could just create a distraction, something loud enough to draw her attention away from me, I might have a chance to make it downstairs. I hit the power button. The TV sprang to life, flooding the room with light and sound. An infomercial blared through the speakers, the volume way too high. Her head snapped toward the noise, and for a brief moment, I thought I had made a terrible mistake. She lunged at the TV, her bony hands slamming into the screen. I watched in horror as the glass cracked, deep gouges appearing in the display as she clawed at it. It was working. While she was distracted, I bolted for the basement door, my heart racing as I fumbled for the light switch. I flipped it on, casting the stairwell in a dim glow just as the commercial ended and the screen went black again. I heard her turn. The sound of the flood alert blaring from the speakers gave me just enough cover as I dashed down the stairs, slamming the basement door shut behind me. I locked it, my hands shaking, and stumbled down the steps into the basement. Everything was silent now, save for the sound of the rain still pouring outside. I leaned against the wall, gasping for breath, my mind reeling from what had just happened. I couldn't believe I had made it, but I wasn't safe. Not yet. I needed to get to my tablet. The storm outside seemed to be fading now. The thunder was no longer crashing, the lightning no longer fierce. The rain had softened, the world outside growing quieter with each passing second. But that feeling, that awful gnawing sense that I wasn't alone, still lingered. She was still here, somewhere. I couldn't shake the feeling that even though the storm was dying down, it wasn't over. Not really. Every time it stormed, I would feel her again. Hidden in the thunder, in the heavy patter of rain on the windows, she would be there, watching, waiting. The storm would never really leave.